How you doing, John? You're one of my idols, so excuse me for being giddy and so excited because.
Yeah, but before you start, Kyran,
yeah,
people say that to me all the time, and they pretend they're like much younger than me. And you used to say when you were at school, you used to watch me when you were a young kid. You're my age, so don't give me all that.
No, come on, listen.
Kyran, take your cap off, mate.
Your grandma used to fancy me as well. Forget all that.
Yeah, take my cap off. Look at the state of me now.
Take your cap off. There we go. That's your true age, mate. That's your true
In fact,
age.
I remember being at school and watching you play.
Oh, no, come on. That can't be true. I
went to a rugby school, Kyran. 1977. I came to England in 1976. 77, I went to watch England versus France. 7-6 at Twickenham. Jean-Pierre, Reeve, and all of them were playing. I'm sure you were on the bench. I'm not sure. 77.
Oh, my God. That's a different era. That's the Will Carter era. That is brilliant. But thanks for coming on the show. It's great to have you. And I was talking to Nick earlier. We were talking about which teams we support, and he said I was a plastic Liverpoolian. I grew up in Liverpool, but he had a great story about the first time.
Where in Liverpool did you grow up?
Well, just Rainhill. I went to St Edward's College in West Derby.
St Eddie's.
St Eddie's, yeah.
My sons used to play against St Eddie's. They went to Birkenhead School, so they played against
the posh one. The really, really posh one.
What about St Anselm's? You would have played against St Anselm's?
Yeah, I played against all of them everywhere. So, but I ended up going to a nice boarding school at the age of 14. It really hit me hard. I didn't know what happened, but thanks for coming on the show. But Nick, tell us your story about when you first saw John play live.
Yeah, so obviously I'm a lot younger than you two.
I know, I can tell.
As you can tell, mate, as you can tell. I first saw you, obviously, watched you World Cup 1990, the rap, all of that sort of stuff, without wanting to blow smoke up your ass. But my first team I supported at school, I was unsure. I lived in Dulwich, right, near Crystal Palace. So Crystal Palace was the local side. Liverpool were the best side. I didn't want to be a glory hunter. I didn't quite have the love for Palace. Who do you support to my old man? And my old man said
Millwall.
No. It wasn't Millwall, mate. So for some reason, him and his dad, my granddad, supported Leeds. And I was like, Leeds, okay. I didn't even know where it was. I was so young. So I said, anyway, I'm supporting Leeds now. I said, you've got to take me to a game. And he took me to a game. And it was, I remember, it's April 91 at Elland Road. You probably don't remember the game. You played.
Was it 5-4?
That's the one. You set up 2, scored 2. You boys were 4-0 up at half time. I said to my dad, I think I've supported the wrong side here when I made my decision at the beginning. Because it was the beginning of that season I made my decision.
Yeah, I remember. They came back, didn't they?
And then Leeds came back, mate. And we didn't win it. It was 5-4. But what a game. And from then on, I was happy.
Lee Chapman scored a hat-trick, if I'm not mistaken.
He did. Jappers, yeah.
He did.
A clumsy one, as it usually was with him.
I know, yeah. But did you play against Kyran? Are you a similar age to Austin Healey?
Yeah, so I was competing with him for years.
So did you play against him when he was at St Anselm's? Because he went to St Anselm's.
No. When I was at St Edward's, they didn't play rugby up to the age of, I think they started at like 14, 15. So when I left,
right, okay.
But listen,
he went to St Anselm's.
Oh right, yeah. So I compete with Austin for many, many years. I'm just looking at. You're 56, aren't you? So you're 8 years older than me.
Well, I don't know about 8. I think you sound like one of them Nigerian footballers.
I love it. Now, listen, it's great to have you on the show. And listen, I've seen you over the last 6 months, last few years, talking very passionately about Black Lives Matter, and I thought it'd be a great opportunity because it kind of feels. I feel very, I suppose, uneducated, uncomfortable talking about it. Myself and Nick coming from very privileged white backgrounds and trying to analyse what's happening, but I love listening to you talk about, the death of George Floyd is visible face of racism, but actually that's not the problem. The problem is I suppose, the systemic sort of underprivileged, uneducated housing opportunities for people from BAME background. And what I found really interesting is your take on it. Well, actually, it's actually more than just having a black coach or a black manager. And looking at rugby, it's quite embarrassing to see for the first time Maggie Alfonso, the female rugby player, black woman, first, I think, woman on the board, first black person on the board ever. And it kind of and then you look at the representation in the final of the 2019 World Cup, where there were 11 players, whereas in 2003 there's only 1. And I know we're trying to do our best, but you look at football, you look at rugby, and actually the opportunities just aren't there, are they?
No, absolutely. The opportunities aren't there, but I'll tell you the interesting thing for me. I used to work in South Africa for 8 years on Supersport. I used to go there 1 week every month. And I went there first in 1994 when the changeover happened with Mandela. People have this, talking about what a great place South Africa is now. And of course it is. It is a great place. But if you remember, 1995, South Africa won the World Cup.
Yeah. I was there.
Yeah,
I was in it. Yeah.
95. Chester Williams. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they said, what a great day for South Africa. Great day for South Africa. They're a black player. 2007, they won the World Cup again. The Rugby World Cup. Yeah. They had 7 or 8 black players on the team, and I think things are getting better because you got 7 or 8 black players on the team. Then 2019, 12 years later, so look out for 2031, but 2019, they wanted to get with a black captain. And they said, how far has South Africa come? Because they've got a black captain. Yeah?
Yeah.
I go to Joburg regularly. Nothing has changed in terms of the normal people, the average person still being poor, still not getting any education. You have a certain group of elite people who is changed for. And for rugby players in South Africa, is changed for. They've got a black rugby captain, but nothing changes for the people in the city, the inner cities. And the same thing's happening here, because what we can do is give a black man a job as a manager, a rugby coach, a chief executive. But what's changing for the communities? And that's really my point. Yeah. You can always elevate people out of blackness. I call it elevating out of blackness, where we change our perception of a brilliant black man to make him a CEO, for Obama, for a black John Barnes to become a manager. But until we change our perception of the average black man in the street, nothing will change. So when you have these visible, it's called these visible representations of us moving forward, because then all of a sudden, the CEO of the rugby RFU is going to be black. But is that changing anything for the black kids in the inner cities? And that's what we have to change. That's what we have to change. So that is why we're on a bit of a crossroads now, and it's quite dangerous, because, of course, once we then see these visible representations of black people making it, albeit elite black people, we then all of a sudden feel that, well, there's not a problem, because the police are stop killing people. Yeah. You have a black football manager. Yeah. And you got black CEOs in companies, but nothing changes in the inner cities. And that's really what we have to change. Now, the difference between rugby and football, I suppose, when you want to look at the problems that football has over rugby, is that, first of all, there's a different demographic of rugby fan. And also, the nature of a rugby fan is different to the nature of a football fan. The people, they're members of society. Now, when I go to rugby matches, I used to go and watch. I went to a rugby school. I played till I was 15 for London schools at centre. I was a centre until I was 16. When it got to 16, they're real rugby players. I could run. I could pass. I came from Jamaica, so I've got good movement, but I'm not prepared to get a broken nose. When you get to 16, 17, if you're not prepared to do that, you're not a rugby fan. However, if you look at the difference between the fans, is that football fans abuse the opposition. I'm not talking about racially. Forget racially. They don't know about players playing. Football fans abuse the opposition. They abuse the other fans. There's that animosity towards each other. In rugby fans support their team. Yeah? So maybe they then may not like the opposition, but it doesn't either get to the stage whereby you're going to, I'm not talking about racially, I'm talking about even abusing them en masse, to abuse the opposition when they get the ball in confrontation. So when, as much as you talk about a different demographic, the nature of the sport's different. In many respects, I always say that if it's the other way around in football. The aggression is off the pitch in football by the fans fighting each other. And on the field, but it's not that bad. Whereas in rugby, all the aggression is on the field, where people are fighting each other. And off the field, the fans have a bit of a banter with each other, but it's not that aggressive. So to compare the two, I don't think it's necessarily, you can't look and learn from each other, because the football fan is never going to change that situation. Because as much as people talk about your job is to support your club, your job also as a football fan, subconsciously, unconsciously, is, and once again, I'm not talking about racially abusing, but your job is to abuse the opposition. You can hear the abuse that goes on. And if there are no black players, it's not going to be racial abuse, but it's still going to be abuse. So I suppose that's the difference.
Yeah, just going back to your, very valid point, John. I spent the last 18 months in South Africa, and, I was coaching a side, and we played up in Pretoria and Joburg, the stadium there, and it's got worse. Actually, it's got worse, the sort of poverty. And as you say, you've got the elite and upper echelons of power, siphoning money off here, there and everywhere and looking after themselves nicely. But, it's systemic in certain areas. But do you not think there is an opportunity, though, when you do have, a person of colour or a black person in power in an inspirational position, to be able to inspire a group. Because it's a little bit like, if you take sport, you know, with sports podcast, when England won the World Cup in 2003, you know, when England do well in football, how that inspires people to take up the game. You know, even if you can get a small percentage of the sort of the ethnic minority changing the way they are, or changing their behaviours, or following a different path, it can still have a tiny effect. Not the massive effect and change we want to impart, but it can still have a bit of an effect. Do you not think?
Well, absolutely, it can inspire people, but I think differently to a few people on this respect, because I don't like the idea of black sporting role models as opposed to black businesses, black educationalists, black doctors, black lawyers, and I'll tell you why. Because the narrative is we can run fast, we can box, we can fight. So if we then become boxers and footballers and rugby players before we begin strong, what we have to change is the perception of our intellect and our morality. So I'm after the equality, intellectual and morally. Because of course, you know, if we have all of the boxers, for example, in every weight category, we are the world champions. People say, yeah, black people can box anyway, black people can fight. We have to change the perception of can we think. So unfortunately, I think that is why I'm going down the other route of looking for more role models. Secondly, the problem you have from that point of view, when you have a president of the United States, a black CEO, a black chief executive, we're talking about inspiring kids, and it does inspire kids. But if we then say to the kids, yes, you can actually make it, because look at Obama, look at somebody who's a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, you can do that. They'll say, well, where I live, I'm going to be expelled from school by the time I'm 14. So as much as we have these visible representations of success, if we're not going to create a platform in the inner cities for us to even get a decent education, decent housing, decent jobs, how can we then go from there to becoming the president of the Prime Minister of England or a Fortune 500 company? What we have to do is create a platform down there for them to be able to do it. Because the narrative always has been, when black people, black elite, black businessmen, let them achieve something and then they'll help people up the ladder. What I say is, let's create a platform down below whereby they can climb up the ladder themselves. Because a lot of black people would have also come from those deprived areas, those areas which have been disenfranchised, but they have got to where they've got to despite the environment. So to then say that you can all do it, no, you can't all do it. Whereas if we were to create an environment down below whereby they're able to get the same education, the same housing, same jobs, then I think that you'll then get more, regardless of whether they're better or not. Because in many respects, the old adage was you have to be better than a white person to get a similar opportunity. And that's still happening. Because you see, a lot of the people in these positions have been brilliant. Now, we don't want everybody to have to be brilliant to get there, because that's not reality. Everybody's not going to be brilliant, but everybody has to be given the equal opportunity. We don't want equality. You'll never have equality. You're going to start from a class system. You're going to have, you know, disparities in wealth, in class, in the fact that in the inner cities, lots of white kids are disenfranchised. But we want an equality in terms of the opportunity that's presented, not equality itself.
I mean, there are projects now in rugby. They've got Project Rugby where they're going into the inner city. They've got all schools as well. So they're getting these kids who would never play rugby to actually take up the game, because people think it's a white man's game. I mean, I saw racism at a very basic level when I was very, very young. I was born in Ireland. All my family are Irish. Came to Liverpool when I was 2 or 3, and my parents, their parents had their own pub in Ireland. And when they came to Liverpool, it was like no blacks, no Irish. And there was a real chip on the shoulder. It was like us against them. But I think what you're saying is, it really resonates with me, because what you're saying is, it's all very well to have someone at the top, but it needs to start at the bottom. Because if you have a black captain, if you had a black president, you know, actually things get ignored. And as you've said in South Africa, you know, everyone's saying, isn't it great? Black captain won the World Cup, but actually nothing's changed. If anything, it's got worse. So how do we? And interesting, there's a black coach at Harlequins who got me to come and work at Harlequins, and read a really interesting article. He never got offered any jobs in rugby outside just the skills coaching at Harlequins, even though he was very successful. And he did say, actually, everyone thinks it's the problem of the black person's problem, of the ethnic minority, but actually it's not their problem, it's the white man's problem. They've got to work out how to resolve this, and you're giving the answer, whereby we have to do something at grassroots level to give people opportunities, so that we have the perception that everyone's equal.
But of course, in rugby or sport generally, I think that it's much more inclusive than and unfortunately, what happens is all the rest of society absolves a sense of responsibility, because we just point the finger at football, rugby, then our coaches, and other the entertainment industry. Yes, with lots of entertainers, but no one at in the administrative level. Whereas for 99% of the black community, they're not going to be footballers, they're not going to be singers, they're not going to be rugby players. So what happens to them? So what we have to do is we have to change the perception of them. Not change the perception of a John Barnes or of a Rio Ferdinand or of a Itoji, because of course we have made it and we have been fairly good at what we do. We have to change our perception of the average person. That's what we have to do. And unfortunately, we then believe that as long as we see these visible representations of success, not only that will that inspire the next black generation. And if you're a girl, that's not going to inspire you because you're not going to be a rugby player or footballer in terms of, obviously, there have to be female rugby and female football. So what about the rest of society? How are we going to help them? And what I say is that for the black elite and the black leaders, we have to stop. I've watched the Black Lives Matter movement. And all I'm hearing now for the Black Lives Matter movement, we need more black football managers, black football administrators, black coaches, black actors, people on television, which is probably less than 5% of the black community. No one's talking about better education, better housing, better schools. And once we get that right, whereby we've changed the perception of those people, they will be able to elevate themselves into positions where they should be. We're not just saying that if you elevate, if you change that environment, they're all going to be doctors and lawyers and footballers. But what they will do is they'll be like the average white person. And that's what they want. And then the ones who are brilliant enough to become a president or a prime minister or a doctor or a lawyer or a CEO, that will automatically happen. But we're letting those people down by not speaking about them. Not speaking about them. When I see that, Raheem Sterling, for example, said that he'll know things are serious and will change when he sees a black CEO in a football club. I say I know things have changed when I see black kids in the inner cities getting a better education and better housing and better job opportunities. That for me is the most important thing. And what underpins that for me is this whole idea when you talk about Black Lives Matter, and then the counter argument to that is all lives matter, and all lives do matter. However, there's one which is more pressing and more urgent now. We know all lives matter, but there's one that's more pressing now, is the Black Lives Matter movement, while accepting and acknowledging all lives matter. So when as the black leaders, we say it's important to have black CEOs and black managers and black people getting Oscars and Emmys, and I say, yes, but the inner cities, they also need to be addressed, and we need more back to schools and education and housing. They say you have to do both. And I'm going, yes, you have to do both, but there is one that is more urgent and more pressing now.
So, John, just regards, looking deeper down at the sort of bottom in society, the roots in society. First question is, you came over here. Were you 12 when you moved over here?
Yeah.
Just ask the question about how, if you think that's changed and in what way it's changed. And, secondly, you read about it in the news and you talk about what Raheem Sterling says, but on the sort of the other side of it, you have Marcus Rashford, who's probably doing much more of what you talk about when he's raising 20 million to help get the free meals, which, he obviously relates a story to when his mum was working on the minimum wage, that it was just enough to bring them dinner, but not lunch, throughout the day. And, someone like that is very, very inspiring. And that goes to more to what you're talking about in terms of achieving what you can. But, just the first part of my question, you've been here since, 1975?
76.
76?
Yeah.
Has there been positive change and negative change? Has not much really changed?
Well, there's been a visible change since I've come to England from Jamaica as a 12-year-old boy. In terms of more black people being on television, black people being in positions of power, but nothing much has changed for the inner cities.
Yeah,
and that's the real thing. I mean, I'm a middle class Jamaican. My dad came. He went to Sandhurst with Camilla Parker Bowles, his husband. He was, Andrew Parker Bowles. My dad's an army officer, and he was Sandhurst military attaché. So I'm a middle class Jamaican. I used to live in Highgate, we lived in Mayfair. So obviously it was a diplomatic posting. So we had nice houses. I went to a grammar school. But all my friends, because I played football and that's a working class sport, were from the inner cities. So I understood from an early age, forget about my life and what happened to me. I saw my friends in terms of the way they were stopped by police. So all of this went on. But, and now it's interesting because right at the start you mentioned white privilege. A lot of white people get very scared. Well, not scared. They get very defensive when you say white privilege because they're assuming that you're saying they didn't get their job on merit. And unfortunately, the narrative is putting it at the top end of white privilege, where you're looking at these people who have been given an advantage either from a job or whatever. But I prefer to say rather how we can stop people getting defensive about white privilege is what we have to do, which I'm about to say now. When I talk about white privilege, I'm not talking about you being given an advantage or a job or you don't deserve what you did because, you're not better than anybody else. White privilege is when you walk down the street, does a woman grab her handbag and cross the road when she comes to you? When you walk into a shop, does the shopkeeper look at you as if you're going to steal anything?
No. Yeah.
And why? White people say, that's not white privilege, that's normal. And I'd say, yes, it's normal to you, but it's not normal to 90% of black people because this is what happens. So when you explain white privilege like that, people then don't have to be defensive. Now, me as John Barnes, I have experienced white privilege because I'm John Barnes, superstar footballer. So when I walk into shops, people open the door for me because I'm John Barnes, footballer, not because I'm a black man. When I go to a bar or a club, I go to the VIP section. Now, if I wasn't a footballer, that wouldn't happen. So white privilege is not personal to. In fact, a lot of black people go through white privilege. If they are the elite, if there are actors and black and footballers. So that is what white privilege is. It's not a personal thing against white people. So therefore, I think that if you explain it that way, then people won't be as defensive when you talk about white privilege. I didn't experience racism, John Barnes. John Barnes experienced racist incidents, and there's a difference between a racist incident and racism. Racist incidents happen at a football match where a banana comes on the field and you get racial abuse. That's on a Saturday for 10 minutes in a match. Saturday night, after the game, when I got in my car and drove out, people were waving at me and cheering me. When I went to a restaurant, when I went to a bar, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, people were opening the door for me. That's not racism. Then on Saturday, a racist event happened. A banana came on the field. Racism happens every single day to black people in the inner cities, whereby as soon as they wake up and they leave their houses, through systemic, unconscious, more often than not, racism, whereby the jobs they have, the houses they live in, the fact that they can't get jobs, the education their kids get, that is racism. Racist incidents is what happens to elite people. A black man can't get an Oscar, so when he goes to the Oscar ceremony, he may not get an Oscar or get passed over. That's a racist incident. For the other 3 months until something else happens, he's acting. He's getting paid like everybody else. So we have to tackle racism and stop focusing on racist incidents. Because the more we focus just on racist incidents, what happens is we look at the incident, we all get outraged, say it's terrible, and then if that incident doesn't happen again for 6 months, we forget about it because it doesn't exist. But it exists for people in the inner cities. So that is why, as much as I'm a big supporter of the George Floyd thing and the fact that, bananas come on the field, if we keep focusing on that rather than the bigger problem, we'll convince ourselves that it doesn't exist when all of a sudden it's not there anymore. And this is a dangerous time because what will happen is if the police stop killing black people, a black manager gets a job, there's no more racist abuse at football fans, a banana comes on the field, society's going to go, we've got rid of racism now. Yeah? Whereas every single day, people are still going through that. And then if we then push for more, they're going to say, hang on, come on. We've given you everything you wanted. What more do you want? That's why I'm saying, keep all the statues. Keep all the statues. A black man will still try and get a manager's job and Oscars and stuff like that. But let's sort out the more pressing issue of disenfranchisement.
It seems to me that the key to all of this really is education at a young age. Education of everyone, really, not just the power that be. What you're saying is just to put a black manager in or a prime minister in, that's not necessarily the answer. So it's very difficult, and it's the sort of thing that was going to take a long time to sort out. But we need to, certainly as white folk, we privileged folk, we've got to work out how to help that.
What is the education we're talking about, though? Because we know the education for the last 400 years in the history of the glorious empire, whereby the Nazis and Stalin, they're all evil. But the British Empire went and civilized everyone and gave them a better life in the countries that they colonized. So, of course, if that's the history and that's the education we need, that puts a certain group of people morally and intellectually above another group of people. And if we continue to push that, and that is why when we're talking about looking at the statues, and why even Piers Morgan will then say, oh, Colson was terrible because Colson was a slave trader, let's throw his statue in the river. But then all of a sudden, when you want to talk about Winston Churchill or others, who are when we talk about I mean British heroes, you draw the line there. Because if the truth be told about so many about other British leaders, this is what Britain was built on. And that's why I'm saying, forget about this throwing statues and attacking statues of the past. Yes, we've got to tell the truth about them and be balanced about them, but let's concentrate on today.
Look, I'm loving listening to you, and I think it's important that the change is out there, and it's not the change that I suppose people like myself and Nick think should happen. Oh, let's just black manager. Actually, it's systemic. It's a long-term thing that we've got to learn to improve everyone. But just before we finish, I just want to get your take, if you don't mind, just talking about Liverpool likely or going to win for
league.
First the league in 30 years. you must be really excited, because with the thought of actually cancelling the league and the amount of WhatsApp people sending me, they were like, you're not going to win it. I'm devastated. The thought of them not winning it after all they've done. But you must be absolutely chuffed that your team, Liverpool, are going to go. Well, I say going to, but how do you think it's going to play out?
They will, mate. They will.
Well, first of all, they're going to win the league. But let me just mention one thing before I get onto this. One thing, going back to the subject we're talking about. Amy Cooper. Do you know Amy Cooper? Amy Cooper was the woman who called the police on that man in Central Park when she had a dog loose. Yeah? Now, Amy Cooper is a white, liberal, Obama-supporting, Trump-hating, left-wing woman who will not consider herself to be racially biased in any way, shape, or form. If that didn't happen 6 weeks ago, Amy Cooper would be on the front line of the George Floyd matters. So is Amy Cooper different to anybody else? What happens is, in times of stress and times of confrontation, all of us automatically go back to our default position of how we have been conditioned to think of who the enemy is. And that black man at that time became the enemy because of the confrontation. So she unconsciously went back to what she could. And she's ashamed and embarrassed. So Amy Cooper isn't different to anybody else. People who are racially biased aren't people who wear pointy hoods and who are, right-wing neo-Nazis, who are white supremacists. There's everybody. This is how we have been conditioned to think. Yeah. And until we all admit it, that this is how we feel, nothing will change. We'll just point the finger at racist football fans, racist people, and feel that we're patting ourselves on the back by saying it's them and not us. So that's the first thing. Let's get back to proper stuff now. Liverpool winning the league. Well, I would be happy as a professional footballer, because I'm a football fan, for anybody who has done what that team has done in the last 2 years, who happens to be Liverpool. Because if a team got 97 points, got to the Champions League final and lost, losing one game, continued into the next season and losing one game, winning the Champions League final, Champions League final, they deserve it. Yes, they're Liverpool, so it's our team and I want them to win. But if you think about it rationally, nobody can say, hey, they don't deserve it, or they shouldn't be given or they shouldn't do it. So this is not a thing, yes, I'm a Liverpool man, I want them to win, but it's the right thing to do. So when people talk about cancelling the league, I thought, well, why cancel the league? Because there's a situation whereby you can have 2 months off, as we've had, then you can get back to playing 9 games, finishing the league, and it's not about Liverpool. It's about the integrity of the sport, which means Leeds should get promoted if there's a problem. The team should get relegated.
I'm with you. I'm with you, Barnsley.
Yeah. No, but people are talking about, because you want Liverpool to win. I said, no, because if Liverpool lose the 8 games or the 9 games, then they shouldn't. But it's more than that. It's about crew coming up. It's about the bottom teams who are going to get relegated. It's about the integrity of the sport. Exactly. So that is why I'm delighted that it's happened. More so, yes, it's Liverpool. But if it was Man United who were that clear, I would say you have to play because they've deserved it. Now, regardless of whether, and the celebrations for me are for the fans. So as much as they're going to say there's an asterisk before it because there are going to be no fans there. When you win the league, it's about the work you put in. It's about the fact that you're 25 points ahead of everybody else. If there's no fans there, that doesn't take away from the fact you are 25 points ahead of everybody else. You have been the best team. So if the fans are going to be disappointed because they're not, they're fine. And it's not going to be a hollow victory. It's not going to be a Pyrrhic victory. It's the victory that you have actually deserved. So regardless of whether there's 1,000, 100,000 or 5,000, you have deserved this. So I know a lot of Man United fans are quite happy that no one's going to be there to celebrate. But from a playing perspective, it wouldn't matter to me at all.
And they've done it the right way, as you say. They're probably, arguably, the best team. If they go on and win it within the next 3 or 4 games, at least, arguably the best team that's ever won the Premier League. Brax could probably relate to winning in front of no fans as well, because he did it regularly at Vicarage Road, didn't you, mate? When
not for the football team.
So
not for
that didn't take away any of the enjoyment you got from winning, did it? And having beers with your mates and realising the hard work you put in and everything.
Kyran?
Yeah, I'm not answering that. He's just full of shit.
No, but in terms, the last thing he said there, where he said about the hard work you put in, having beers with your mates, regardless whether the fans are there or not, exactly. You deserved it, and you won. The fact that, because there are clubs who may have even more supporters. But the fact is, with all the supporters and the history and the traditions of, Leicester or somebody else, you won. And that's the most important thing.
I mean, you go back to those horrible moments in pre-season, especially, don't you? Like, everything goes through your mind when you over the course of the season you win the league championship. Obviously the games you pull out of the bag, the moments in games and everything, and of course you would like the fans who have been a massive part of it to celebrate with you and you to see the enjoyment on their faces. But that will happen in time. But as Barnsley sort of says, and we know, Kyran, it's about the people either side of you and the graft you put in, the challenges you've had to overcome, and you've done it.
Yeah, I actually don't remember. People ask me about games I played in 10 years with England and 10 years with Saracens and 3 years at Bristol. I don't remember hardly any of the rugby. All I remember is the crack I had with my mates and the fun and the crack afterwards and the piss taking and the road trips and the poker games. And I just don't really remember much of the rugby, maybe because I got knocked out so many times. But actually, it's the people around you that matter most, isn't it?
But that's what contributes to the success. Because although you're not thinking about the success when you've actually won, the fact, the crack, the togetherness, the camaraderie, things aren't going when you pull together, that is why you win. So if you look at, even from Liverpool's perspective, in the old days, people talk about Rush and Dalglish. It was never about Rush and Dalglish, in my opinion. It was about the Sammy Lees and the Jimmy Cases and the other ones, because you're always going to have superstars who are going to get the glory. Rob Andrew may have got the glory, or Johnny Wilkinson, but it's about the ones, the unsung ones, who you will appreciate equally as much. And that's the thing. The camaraderie is not about the superstars sticking together. It's about the whole collective. And that's what Liverpool had before. That's what they had now under Jurgen Klopp. Forget about Salah and Firmino and Mane. It's about the Hendersons and the Fabinhos and the unsung heroes. And that's what success is all about.
And it's a squad effort, and tied into that is, at training, they need to test you in training, don't you, to prepare for those big games and big moments as well.
I'm not being funny, but I've got a feeling, John, if you actually stuck with rugby with your left foot as well, I reckon you could have been an amazing rugby player.
Not with his face. Not with his face. I would have been a Rob Andrew. I played centre. I played number 12.
Yeah.
Listen, I played number 12. I was going to play 13, but 13 is where you really have the ones who, Mike Tindall and people like that. I like the number. Listen, the scrum halves and the inside centres, we're the cowards. I don't care what anybody tells me. So, apart from Johnny Wilkinson should have been playing there. So, no, rugby wasn't for me. I was too pretty.
You definitely chose the right sport, mate. That's for sure.
Listen, thanks for your time today. Very enlightening, very passionate, and
great points. Yeah, very well balanced. And
anytime, gentlemen. And once this goes away, we'll get back. Please ring me and let's talk more about rugby as well, because I know a little bit about rugby. I didn't play football at school when I came to England. I came from England. My dad played football for Jamaica. I grew up playing football. I've come to the home of football. I think I'm going to have a great time. I go to a rugby school and I only played rugby for 4 years.
That made you the rounded person you are today.
Absolutely.
Cheers. Thank you, mate.
All the best.
Good man, John. Cheers.
Take care, lads.
Thank you.
Thank you.